me like they want us to be afraid, man. Maybe we just like being afraid. Maybe we just so used to it at this point that it's just a part of us, part of our culture. Security alert on orange. It's been on orange since '01, G. I mean, what's up, man? Can a brother get yellow, man? Just for like 2 months or something? Goddamn. Sick of that.
Okay, guys, I just wanted to give y'all some very pertinent updates on this, in case you were keeping tabs on it. And if you weren't keeping tabs on it, I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of this, because this may be one of the single biggest events to happen in the history of our nation. That is how serious what I'm bringing to you is. And I would very much appreciate it if you guys would take the 10 minutes or whatever it ends up being to check out this video to understand what I'm saying. If you haven't heard, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas has produced what he calls the Texas Plan. Okay? And Article 5 of the Constitution, there can be an amendments done to the Constitution through what is called a Convention of the States. Okay? If 32 of the 50 states agree to a convention, they can vote and make amendments to the Constitution. Okay? I think, as most of us are pretty well aware, Obama doesn't seem too very concerned with the Constitution. The size and the scope of his actions and executive orders usurping the Constitution that founded this great nation of ours, he just doesn't care about it. Now, I won't scroll through too much of this article. I will leave a link to it. What's important to understand here, what I want you to hear is the Constitution was formed when these founding fathers had written a whole bunch of papers called the Federalist Papers. And there's actually anti-Federalist papers too, because even when the founding fathers were founding the government, there was two main stances, I guess, on how they wanted the government to be constituted. Governor Abbott details his research in this 92-page report, which I'm obviously not expecting you guys to read. But he went through and read the Constitution, and then he read what exactly our founding fathers intended the Constitution to mean. They actually go in and they spell it all out. He's laid out a 10-point plan of things that he wants to amend in the Constitution. Now, I think a lot of people hear the word amend Constitution and they immediately get scared. Now, before you do, I want you to have a look at this, and I want you to look at the common sense measures that he is proposing to our Constitution. And let's keep in mind that when this nation was formed, it was never meant for the federal government to roll over the states like a monarchy. The federal government is supposed to be a representative of the states, which each state's government being its own sovereign government. Okay? This is important to understand. The way the federal government's been acting for, I don't know, the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years has been a lot closer to a monarchy than a republic or a democracy. And that's not the way that it was supposed to be. Let me scroll down here, and I'm going to show you his 10-point plan in case you missed it or just need a refresher, because it's a pretty common sense approach to government, if you ask me. Well, it looks like in this article they only list 9. I thought it was 10. Apparently it's 9. Now here's what he wants to do. Prohibit Congress from regulating activity that occurs wholly within one state. Now this is actually something that was already supposed to be in the Constitution that nobody's really following up with. Alright? States are supposed to be their own sovereign governments. This would enforce that and keep the government from coming in and basically removing the sovereignty of these state governments with these acts and laws that they're recklessly passing in Washington. This is a pretty common sense thing to me. Look at number 2. Require Congress to balance its budget. This is the state of our nation, people. They actually want to change the Constitution to force the Congress to balance the budget. This is pretty common sense. I've said this time and time again. You can't keep spending money lawlessly when you are insanely, grossly in debt. Okay, this is a common sense measure. 3. Prohibit administrative agencies and the unelected bureaucrats that staff them from creating federal law. This makes sense. If there's people out there who are not elected by the people and they're out there creating laws, this should probably not be happening. What's to stop them from getting somebody like Hitler and going and making a bunch of crazy laws? I'm not saying that's happening. I'm just making the worst possible example. This is something that should not be occurring. This is common sense. Once again, number 4, prohibit administrative agencies and the unelected bureaucrats that staff them from preempting state law. Once again, common sense. All right. Allow 2/3 majority of the states to override a U.S. Supreme Court decision. Once again, this is common sense. This is the Supreme Court running amok the way that it is not something that our founding fathers had intended, guys. One of the defining principles of our government is checks and balances. As it stands right now, the Supreme Court right now is America's dictator. What they say is law, and what they say there is no way to refute or overturn, and that is not anything remotely close to what our founding fathers intended when they wrote the Constitution. You can read it all over the Federalist Papers. This was never supposed to happen. Now, if the Congress, or I'm sorry, if the executive, judicial, and legislative branch of the governments all have checks and balances over each other, then should we not have a check and balance for the Supreme Court? This would make sense. This country was founded on checks and balances, and right now, the Supreme Court does not have a check and balance. This would give us that check and balance. Number 6, require a 7-justice supermajority vote for U.S. Supreme Court decisions that invalidate a democratically enacted law. I don't necessarily have a problem with this. And this is the reason why. Because let's say we get a president in office who gets to elect or who manages to get 3 Supreme Court justices in the chamber that are going to bow down to his agenda, and they're going to go along with whatever his plan is. Because trust me, Supreme Court justices are just as capable of not doing the right thing as any other American. These are not gods, people. They are just normal people who are Supreme Court justices. Okay? Sometimes these people will, in fact, not do the honorable thing. And don't think for a second, just because they are Supreme Court justices, they are beyond reproach. You can go and look up history and discussions about the Supreme Court, and this very fact has been pointed out time and time again. Alright, so the reason for a 7-person majority would to ensure that something like this could not happen. There needs to be an overwhelming consensus that something needs to be overturned simply to overturn it, and not just by a couple of crony judges who are working for the man. Right? Now, once again, number 7. Restore the balance of power between the federal and state governments by limiting the former to the powers expressly delegated to it in the Constitution. We're basically making an amendment, right, to tell the federal government that they have to enforce the Constitution and respect states' rights, because states run the federal government and not the other way around. And now we're going to have to amend the Constitution just to make sure that they understand that this is already a law in the Constitution. Isn't that ironic? But this is common sense, folks. They're actually passing a bill telling the federal government that they need to uphold the Constitution. I know it's laughable. I know it's ridiculous, but this is the state of our nation at the moment, and this is why good men need to stand up and do the right thing. This is common sense, people. This is not some radical, crazy thing that's going to just destroy our country. These are common sense measures. Number 8. Give state officials the power to sue in federal court when federal officials overstep their bounds. Once again, another check and balance, right? If federal officials like the BLM and the EPA are overstepping their bounds, states need to have the ability to protect their state. All right. And this is pretty common sense. And then allow 2/3 majority of the states to override a federal law or regulation. Once again, this is just another check and balance. We already have a check and balance system, but this would add some additional checks and balances that will prevent the federal government from acting tyrannical. I assure you, getting 2/3 of the states to agree to override a law would not be easy, unless the government starts pushing things like violating people's Second Amendment rights to bear arms, or their First Amendment rights to free speech and assembly, and so on and so forth. So once again, this is pretty common sense. More checks and balances to keep the government from acting tyrannically makes sense. Anything that's going to prevent more loss of liberty from the American people makes sense. So this is ultimately what his plan is. This is some pretty common sense stuff, people. This is not some drastic thing that's going to put this nation under some kind of free fall or anything like that. This is to help return our Constitution back the way it was initially intended. All right? All these presidents signing these executive orders all the time is not the way this government was intended to be ran. The Supreme Court, being the tribunal court of death that no one can supersede, was not the way that this country was intended to be run. These are common sense measures, and that's it. And I'm going to, I don't know if you guys have heard about this recently. I actually hadn't heard about this Convention of States for a while. I actually had every intention to go and look up some information to see what the status of this was, because of the fact that it provides additional checks and balances and requires the government to balance the budget. I thought this was actually for once a good thing, because the one thing that we do all know is there's no point in amending the Constitution if the federal government isn't going to follow the Constitution anyways. This is actually what makes this so brilliant, is the fact that this now gives the states the authority to stand up to that. And that, my friends, is the only real way to take back America. You must give power back to the states. That's the way it was intended. So I went to go look this up, and lo and behold, articles started popping up about this situation, and there are some very important updates that I need to share with you guys.
Barack Obama has gotten virtually everything he wants, and then some, because he has usurped the United States Constitution. And that brings us to the Article 5 Convention of the States. Pertaining to the United States Supreme Court specifically, among some of the possible amendments that we're talking about in the Convention of the States is limiting the scope, if you will, of the United States Supreme Court. Number one would be possible term limits for Supreme Court justices. And number two, if we have a rogue ruling like we had last year from this Supreme Court, a mechanism in place for states to undo the damage by a rogue Supreme Court.
Well, it's interesting, Graham. The United States Supreme Court was never, ever meant to hold the kind of power that they do. Every time they make a decision, for instance, Obamacare, or something like that, they are effectively amending the Constitution, the original Constitution, from its original intent. We know that. So, yes, the Convention of States Project, through Article 5, which is a gift from our founders that is constitutional, it's actually in the Constitution, we can rein in an out-of-control Supreme Court. And there are a lot of different ways to do it. We can change their power and scope. We can put in term limits from them. Think about what we could do if we redefine the Commerce Clause or the General Welfare Clause. There are a lot of different things we can do, and we can limit the power of the Supreme Court. Right now, outside of the presidency, it is the most powerful branch of our government.
5 states out of the 32 needed for a convention of the states have approved such a resolution in their state houses, but we've hit a sticking point in some states, specifically Virginia and Arizona. What's the problem?
Well, Virginia, we have passed through the House. We need to pass through the Senate. We need 3 more senators in Virginia to stand up and say, yes, we're going to do the will of the people. We are going to follow the will of the people. And so we need all hands on deck. We need all our constituents to call their senators in Virginia and tell them to pass our resolution. That's what we need in Virginia. Now, in Arizona, it's a very different scenario. The president of the Senate, a guy by the name of Andy Biggs, is holding up our resolution in Arizona, and that's a problem. So we need our constituents in Arizona to call that guy and say, you know what? We need you to follow the will of the people.
And you know what? If you're not a resident of Arizona, go ahead and let him know. This Andy Biggs is the guy, Senator Andy Biggs of Arizona.
Yes.
Let him know, because this is not just an Arizona issue, of course. This is a national issue, an issue that, as you said, the framers of the Constitution gave us to fix a Washington, D.C. that will not fix itself. And as it pertains to the United States Supreme Court, indeed, I think one of the first things that we need to have is some sort of term limit, because back when the Constitution was framed in 1787, they didn't expect these Supreme Court justices to live as long as they are living. Witness Ginsburg, for example. Real quick, there are other states, Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma, also on the tipping point. They're on the verge right now.
Actually, Nebraska and Kansas both failed today, and each one has its own separate issues, but we thought we were going to get through Nebraska. We didn't. There was a filibuster by the left that they were successful in killing our resolution in Nebraska. And in Kansas, we have a lot higher of a milestone in order to get through. We need a 2/3 vote. We were 7 shy, but it's not altogether over in Kansas. We may have one final shot at this yet this year.
All right, time to get on the phone, write some emails, and let people know that we need to have this. Ken, thank you.
So yeah, so this right here is the president of the Convention of the States. All right, he's got this whole organization. He's trying to get everybody organized to get this passed. All right, so we need all patriots on deck, guys. Now is not the time to look at an article and go, oh, that's interesting, and close the window and go watch something else. All right? You guys need to actually do some work here. I need y'all's help. America needs our help. Not just y'all, me too. Okay, we need to get on the phone. If we're in states that are not on board with this Convention of the States, or you even heard him right there, or even if you want to call this guy in Arizona, okay, and let him know that they need to get this thing passed, we need to get people to start making phone calls. All right, this is the U.S. Constitution, and this is about the freedom and liberty of the American people, and about the tyrannical run amok of the government and the usurping of the Constitution that's supposed to protect our liberties and our freedoms. All right, this is important. All right, this is real life 21st century patriot stuff. All right, it only takes 15-20 minutes to pick up the phone and make some phone calls. All right, so I just have a couple of more things that I want to show you guys that are super important. So just hang tight, and then I'm going to show you this right here. Now, as you can see right here, the West Virginia Senate just called for a constitutional convention. Okay, so that would make this the 5th state to call for, or it would be the 6th state to call for a convention. All right, and we need, it says right here, it would take requests from 34 states to convene an Article 5 convention, named after the article of the Constitution that describes the process, and it would take 38 states to approve any changes to the Constitution. So this is not an easy process. This is a big deal, but it is more than possible. Now, as they told you, the director of the Convention of the States project told you, we've pretty much lost in one state. All right, but we don't need all 50 states. All right, we only need 34. So don't get discouraged and think that just because we lost one state that we should give up, because there's a good chance this is going to go through. Okay? Now, this is something that I want to show you guys, because this is one of the most ridiculous things that I've ever seen. I just saw it when I looked at this a minute ago, so give me just a minute to find this, because I want you to see this for yourself, because this is absolutely ridiculous. The Senate voted 18-14 to call for the convention, with every Republican voting in favor and every Democrat opposed. Are you kidding me, guys? Are you kidding me? My very first question would be, how are you going to sit there and tell me that there's any Democrat who's elected in this country, because I don't care about your party, how can they look at any of this and not see common sense measures to protect the liberties of the American people? Shame on you, Democrats. American people, 90% of us, we don't care about your party. We only care about our individual liberties, all right? This two-party system that they're using to sit there and stonewall things has to stop. You guys need to stop worrying about your party. You need to stop worrying about your re-election campaigns, and you need to start worrying about the American people. So this is the kind of mess that we're going in. And most of the states, it's this close. All right, because the Democrats are stonewalling this thing, at least in this state. That is not the case in every state. All right? I don't care. I don't call myself a Republican. I don't call myself a Democrat. Okay? I don't have a party. I'm not running for office. I'm not going to be president. I just want to know that I can live my life in the under the protection of the Constitution that I've had like 6-7 generations of go out into the U.S. military and fight to protect. Is that so wrong? I mean, come on. So this thing is close, guys, but I wanted to show y'all. This is still how these knuckleheads are acting in Congress. All the one party for, all the one party against. We need to get on the phone and we need to call these people and let them know that they need to put this stuff aside and start standing up for the American people like they're supposed to. So this just kind of sums it up. I have one last thing to show you. This is the most important thing that I'm going to show you in my video, and it will only take a moment. So let's jump right over here. And this is what I want you to see. You don't have to do any work to find out who your congressman is in your state if you want to call them. I am here to tell you that I have done all the work for you. Actually, whoever created this website has done all the work for you, but I am showing you right here. This is contactingthecongress.org. It's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, let's say you're like me and you live in Texas. All you do is go over here and you click on Texas, guys. All right, it's that easy. All right. And then you go down here, and as you see, like, for example, you see all these people. There's Ted Cruz. All right, let's click on his name right there. And there you go. It's got a DC phone. It's got all these numbers right here. Okay. You can call all of these offices. All right. There's and in every state, it's exactly the same. You just click on your state. You can click on the governor or whoever it is you want to call. Maybe you want to call somebody who you found out is stonewalling this thing and let them know that that's not acceptable. All right, so all you have to do is come over here and click on this thing, guys, and you can get the number to your local congressman or governor or whoever it is you want to call in your state to let them know that we, the people, need this. We want them to do their job and protect our liberties and to stand up for this convention of the states. And this is what I'm asking everybody to do. Take 5 minutes to make a phone call or send an email. All right, it only takes 5 minutes. Longer than it took to watch my video and listen to me yap. All right? If you have a couple of friends, mention it to them. Even if it's just 2 or 3 people, or your mom and dad, or your brother and sister. You know? Somebody that comes into your job every day, you know? Anybody. Pass this message along and say, here, this is a number. Will you take 5 minutes and give them a call? Or here's the email address. Will you take 3 minutes and let them know that we want this to happen? I mean, because this is not the time to sit idly by. Okay? Obviously, this thing that went down in Oregon didn't turn out too well for these guys. All right? This right here is a way to stand up for our rights constitutionally in a legal fashion. This is exactly what our founding fathers have set out for us to do, is allowed for us to call for a convention of the states to stop an overreaching government. All right, and all we have to do is make a phone call, write an email, and tell a couple of people, and in 5 minutes you're done. All right, so I'm calling out on all Americans to spread this thing around. Make your own video, tell your friends, share my video. I do not care, okay? Y'all know me, I'm not here for subscribers. I appreciate my subscribers, but I am just another guy who wants to get the truth out to America because I love this country. I've been to other countries in the world, and it's pretty freaking awesome here. And I'd like for it to remain that way. So, I'm going to go now, guys. But I think this is a chance for all of us who believe in freedom and liberty, and for all of us who want to stop a constantly overreaching government. This is the way to do it. Common sense measures. Okay? So let's spread the word, guys. This is really important that we actually get up and do some work. We're only talking about 10 minutes here. Alright? And it costs nothing. So, alright. That's all I have, guys. Let's hope we can get this thing going and get America back on the right track. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. Y'all have a good day, and I will talk to you soon.